Hey guys, thanks for joining us here at Salty Ginger Talk. If you are a returning listener, it is great to have you back. If you're a new listener, we appreciate you checking us out and we hope you like what you hear. So, our podcast is for people that want to learn something new or make themselves a little bit better every day. We talk about a wide variety of topics. We actually have guests lined up to talk through kind of how they navigate their life, how they think about things, how they deal with difficult situations. And we talk a lot on this channel about personal accountability, learning to control our thought processes, learning to control how we react to things that happen in the world, and making the world a better place by having positive interactions with people and showing leadership, especially in challenging situations. So, along those lines, today's episode, we're going to give you 5 reasons to consider why adversity is good for you, specifically good for your brain and developing your brain to handle challenging situations. So, let's just start with some basics, right? Life is tough. You're going to have negative things that happen in your life, and they start when you're a kid and they happen until you leave the earth. There is just always hard things in life. Some of them are big things, but you're always going to have challenges. Like it's just built in to the human experience. So, knowing that, we want to learn how do we figure out how to best deal with those situations so they cause us the least amount of negative impact and we minimize the time and effort we spend dwelling on those things and move on to the more positive and impactful and beneficial opportunities that we have in our life. So, facing adversity forces you to develop coping mechanisms. It helps you build resilience and it helps you learn new strategies to overcome challenges. And all of that ultimately increases your mental capacity. One of the things we learned when we were playing sports, and we've talked about it on the channel before, so until we were about 20, our whole existence was around becoming a professional baseball player. And one of the things we learned as we moved up the ranks into high school and college and talked to pro scouts and all the other jazz is you have to get better. The game speeds up, things get faster, people get bigger, stronger, things happen at a quicker rate, and you need to get better. So you don't want it to slow down. You just need to raise your level and raise your game. And I think that's a good way to think about how to deal with adversity. Because when you're in challenging situations, everybody's human. Nobody is immune to it. That fight or flight response kicks in, and a lot of times it will kind of short circuit common sense. It will stop you from thinking rationally about what's going on. This is how con men work on people, right? So you hear about people that get phone calls and, oh, your daughter's in jail, your husband was in a car accident, whatever. They create some emergency situation and they put pressure on you during those emergency situations. And when you're in those situations, you can kind of let your faculties be suspended and your common sense and your logic be suspended because you're thinking with emotion. And that's normal. But what we have to do if we want to be better people, if we want to live better lives, is we have to learn some coping mechanisms and strategies on how to deal with those things. And we've done episodes on those specific coping strategies before. So we would encourage you to go back and look at some of those episodes, how to deal with bad news, how to be more resilient, how to develop mental toughness. So we've given very specific kind of step-by-step instructions on how you can improve yourself and steps to take in those situations. So go back and look at some of those episodes because there's some good tips in there. But today we're going to talk just specifically about 5 benefits for you to consider that when you face adversity, you're actually improving yourself as a human being. So let's just jump into that. First one is increased resilience. So when you encounter setbacks, your brain adapts and finds ways to navigate through those difficult situations. And that improves your mental ability to bounce back from future challenges. This was one thing where sports helped us really well because it doesn't matter how good you are, you lose sometimes. That's one of the things when I coached baseball, I would always tell the kids, who's your favorite baseball team or who won the World Series last year? Doesn't matter. And they would say Team X, whoever Team X was. And I would say, well, they lost 70 times last year. And even the best baseball teams, like if you lose 70 times, that means you won over 100 games over the course of a 162 game season plus all the playoffs to win the World Series. That's just the math. So even the best teams in the world face adversity. Even the best teams in the world have losing streaks. And having that mental toughness to fight through when you're going through those things is terribly important. It's the same thing in life. When you get bad news about one of your kids, or you lose your job, or you're in a difficult relationship that ends and you have to build a new life, those are all challenges that we all face at some point in our life. And having the mental toughness and adversity, having the mental toughness and resiliency in the face of adversity is terribly important. And it's no different than like training a muscle in the gym. So if you put that muscle under stress, it works, it gets sore, it heals, and then when you go back to that muscle, it's stronger than it was before. And exactly the same thing works on your brain or in your brain when you face adversity. So it also, number two, it also improves your cognitive flexibility, because adversity often demands creative solutions, which can stimulate your brain to explore new perspectives and approaches to problem solving. So the very first piece of investment real estate I bought with a friend, and it was about 25 years ago at this point. And we did it in a creative way. So we wrote letters to people who were behind on their mortgages, and we said, look, we can just take over your mortgage payment for you if you sign over the title to your house. And that worked really well for one couple because they were so far in debt they couldn't get out. And it made sense for them to just transfer the house to us, and we took care of the delinquency. Well, we didn't know how to research all that, and so we wound up with a much bigger bill than we expected when we took over the house. And we had to cure that quickly so that the bank did not foreclose on the house and we would lose our investment in the house. So that's a good example of where we needed cognitive flexibility, because one, we had to come up with a creative solution to work with the seller to help them out of their jam. And clearly we made money on the house after we fixed it up. We took it over, we completely rehabbed it and remodeled it, and then we rented it out for about 15 years and sold it at a very nice profit about 15 years later. But at the beginning, it was tough because we had to keep problem solving. We kept having challenges or issues pop up that we had to deal with, but it increased our cognitive flexibility to solve those problems. So because we went through that adversity over a 15-year period, it made us better. It made us stronger. It made us think through challenges and come up with creative solutions to those challenges. And if you keep putting yourself in situations where you face adversity, you'll be able to keep developing kind of the mental acuity to get that done, because your brain doesn't stay static. It's not the same throughout your life. And so as you grow and as you learn, your brain factors in all of the learnings it gets from the experiences that you've had, and it draws on those when you face similar challenges going forward. So adversity is what allows all those things to happen. If everything just works the same, you don't have any problems ever, then you're not going to have the mental of cognitive flexibility to deal with the problems you need to deal with. We would argue that's one of the reasons that we see so many people today that fixate on things that aren't real problems. And when I say they aren't real problems, like misgendering people, you use the wrong pronouns. That's not a real problem. You might be upset, you might be offended. Good for you. There's no rule that says you get to go through life not being upset or not being offended. That's not a real problem. A real problem is a sick relative. A real problem is losing your job and not being able to pay your bills. A real problem is a relationship that breaks up that you've been in for a long time and it's very difficult to deal with emotionally. So those are real problems. And we see kind of a fixation in today's world of not real problems because we've got a pretty good society. Things work pretty well for most people. We, in one of our quotes the other day, we said, you can avoid poverty if you follow 3 rules. Graduate high school. Make sure you graduate from high school. Get and keep a job, and don't have kids until you're married. If you follow those 3 rules statistically, you're not going to be poor. You're going to be able to pay your bills. You're going to be able to have a decent life. if you follow those 3 rules. And so challenges are going to present themselves, and you need to be prepared. You need to be prepared to deal with those challenges. And this is the way you do it, by consistently putting yourself in situations where you face adversity. So the number 3 reason is all that stuff we just talked about. A lot of it has to do with your prefrontal cortex development. So the prefrontal cortex is a spot in your brain that's responsible for decision making and executive function. And it can become more active when facing challenges, which leads to improved cognitive control. So by developing your prefrontal cortex, you can stop yourself from throwing tantrums. You can stop yourself from allowing panic or anxiety to overtake you. You can stop yourself from running away from problems if you train yourself step by step by step to deal with adversity and face those challenges head on instead of ignoring them or running away from them or pretending they don't exist. So that prefrontal cortex is very, very important. And when your fight or flight response kicks in, when you first face adversity, that's like we talked about, that's a very natural and normal thing for everybody to go through. But as you grow, you should develop techniques and coping skills that allow you to say, hey, this isn't as bad as I think it is. I'm going to keep my wits about me. I'm going to gather all the facts that I have available to me. I'm going to make the best decision I can in the situation that I'm in. So that prefrontal cortex and developing kind of those circuits in your mind is terribly, terribly important. And by putting yourself consistently in adverse challenges, adverse situations, it's going to help your brain develop those connections that you need to deal with life, just life in general. Next, stress adaptation. So stress can be detrimental in excess. Let's not kid ourselves. So if you have a whole bunch of really big things happen at once, that can feel very daunting. That can feel very challenging. That's not a situation that you want to seek out or put yourself in. You might find yourself in those situations, and you got to work through them the best you can. Our argument would be keep your wits about you, gather as many facts as you can, make a common sense plan to attack the challenges that are in front of you, and try to get them behind you as quickly as you can. So Marcus Aurelius said, the obstacle is the way, meaning whatever the challenge is, you've got to take it head on to get past it. Winston Churchill said, if you're going through hell, keep going. You don't want to stop and look at the scenery. So when you have big challenges, the best thing to do is to take action quickly. You don't want to fly off the handle and make rash or not well thought out decisions, but you do want to put together a plan and start attacking that plan immediately, because that is the best way to get that challenge behind you. And when you adapt to stress, you'll be able to handle those things much better and do those things at a much quicker pace. Those things being, gather the facts, put your emotions aside, look at the situation logically, make good decisions, put a plan together, and execute that plan as quickly as you can. So it's a great way to go. It's a great way to think about it. And the final tip is learn from experience. So if you consistently wind up in the same situations over and over again, you've got to stop and ask yourself, what am I doing? Because it's you. You're the challenge. You're the problem. Something you're doing is causing it. Because if you are the common denominator, logic says you are the problem. Now, that's not judgmental. It's not right or wrong. It's not good or bad. It just is. And if you want to get out of those situations or prevent those situations from happening going forward, you need to think about the actions that you're taking that keep leading to those situations. Maybe you're having trouble holding a job. Are you showing up to work on time? Do you have a good attitude? Are you going above and beyond? Are you accepting all the training that comes your way? Are you getting along well with your coworkers? Maybe one of those things is the problem, and you have control over how those things go. Maybe it's the same thing in relationships. Maybe you don't communicate well. Maybe you're selfish and don't think about the other person. Maybe you pick the wrong person all the time because you're focused on looks or money or something else instead of, hey, I want to be with a person that relates well to me, I relate well to them, and we genuinely care about each other's happiness. So maybe it's something you're doing, but you've got to learn from those experiences. So it's one of the things, we hear people talk a lot about their exes negatively. And it's like, okay, you chose them, like you chose to have kids with them. So they couldn't have been all bad. There's got to be some good in there somewhere. You are choosing to look at it from a very negative way, and you're choosing to abdicate your share of the responsibility for why that relationship failed. Because make no mistake about it, every relationship takes two people committed to the relationship, and both people do good things and both people do things that rub the other person the wrong way. And you've got to take responsibility for those things. So learning from your experiences is a key part of dealing with adversity, because you can avoid some adversity. Like we talked about, if you have big challenges, if you keep finding the same things going wrong over and over again, you have control over that. You have to identify what the root cause is and fix the root cause. That's the way to get it done. So next, a couple things to consider. Severity matters, like we talked about. If you got a whole bunch of stuff, that's not a situation you want to put yourself in. You might wind up in that situation. That's tough. Like we talked about, you got to fight your way through that. But, that's not what we're advocating. We're not advocating making your life as hard as possible. But both physical and mental stress, to a degree, are very good for your overall growth as a person. So when we say physical stress, a hard workout a couple times a week, lifting heavy weights 3-4 times a week, doing a high intensity interval workout a couple times a week. That's good for your body. It's good for you to do those things to the right degree. You can overdo those things and injure yourself or become obsessed with them and cause problems, but think about the severity. The right level of stress is good. And the second thing to consider is individual response. Some people are much more hardwired to deal with stressful situations. We're that way. We generally, even as a kid, we handled stressful situations pretty well. And I think that has to do more with internal chemistry and brain wiring than anything else. So I think it's mostly nature and then some nurture. But if you're not wired that way, it doesn't absolve you from developing these skills. We've talked about it on this channel before. I have a very bad temper. That doesn't give me the right to blow up and throw tantrums and treat people poorly. And I've done that a lot in my life. I used to do it all the time. I've made grown men cry just from talking to them. And I'm not proud of it. It's not good that I did those things, but it's true. And I had to learn that that's not the right way to approach people. It's not what leads to success. It's not what leads to long-term relationships. And I have the responsibility to change my approach to make those things work with other people. Now, I am who I am. I'm always going to be direct. I'm always going to be honest. I'm always going to say, I tell people all the time, you can ask me anything you want, but you should be prepared, because I'm going to tell you the truth. You might not like the truth. I say a lot, the truth is like poetry, and most people fucking hate poetry. But people always say they want to hear the truth until you tell them the truth, and then you get a lot of different reactions. But even if you're a person that's more sensitive, even if you're a person that feels things more deeply, it's on you to develop coping mechanisms to deal with the real world. The real world's not going to change. It's not going to become easier. You have to make yourself better. And so that's our argument, is that by consistently putting yourself in situations where you face adversity, you can develop these coping mechanisms. You can help rewire your brain so you can stay calm, you can get to facts, you can make good decisions, and you can execute a plan to put the adversity behind you. So that's the episode for today, guys. Hope you found that helpful. We think about this stuff a lot because the world's not an easy place. You've got to be able to deal with it. It's up to you to make the life that you want. Nobody's going to come save you. It's on you to build the life that you want. And if you choose to just let life make those decisions for you, who knows where you're going to wind up. We argue it's much better to take control of your own destiny and push aggressively towards the things that are important to you. So we're hoping that this episode will help you do that. James puts it up over here every day. Don't forget to go to our website, saltygingertalk.com. We've got all of our podcast episodes available there. We've got all links to our social media content there. And we publish a newsletter every weekday that you can subscribe to on our website as well. So appreciate you guys checking us out. Hope everybody has a great week. It's the holiday season right now, so I hope everyone's being safe, spending time with the people they care about, and enjoying themselves. And thanks for checking out the channel, guys. We will see you next time.